Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, it is I don't know if it's our favorite kind of show, but it is definitely what feels like our most frequent, oh no, something's happening, run, put up the Tony signal. We have to do an emergency live podcast kind of show.
Yeah, breaking news from Pete Thamel, Pat Forty, all of the national college football writers, reporters that Michigan is suspending head coach Sherrone Moore for 2 games this season, game 3 and game 4. Pick and choose whichever games you don't want to, where's your vacation? When is your vacation? You got a scheduled vacation in mid-September. Okay, we'll suspend you for those 2 games. And so that's the latest. And Tom, I've gotten texts and I've gotten DMs and people are saying like, is this it? Is this all? And like, no. From every indication, this is just somewhat of a peace offering for Michigan, or just to like, well, we know this is going to happen anyway, so let's go ahead and get this thing started. As far as I'm concerned, this is just the beginning, and I'm not talking about any hammer or whatever. This is not even the beginning, because we've seen other coaches booted and suspended and things. So this is the latest, and what will continue to be some punishments handed down to Michigan. And this is not even NCAA.
Right, correct. This is the bargaining phase. Like we've talked about Michigan and Michigan fans and Michigan media in some cases kind of walking their way through the 5 stages of grief, and this is Michigan getting to the bargaining phase where it's okay. We didn't do anything wrong. However, even though we didn't do anything wrong, you can suspend our head coach for 2 games because now. Is it the first 2 games? No. Is it the 2 most consequential games? No. They're going to play Sherrone Moore's alma mater, Oklahoma, in week 2. So you can't have a 2-game suspension involves that because Tony, he really wants to go. Mm-hmm. So you can tell they feel bad, but also he really wants to go to that one. So not that one, but games 3 and 4, the very traditional game 3 and 4 suspension for doing something wrong. I think the most important part of this for anyone in terms of understanding, what does this mean? Is this in the big picture? What does this mean? Control F, the NCAA agreed to in the article about this suspension. And when nothing comes up, you'll go, that's interesting. So this is Michigan's opening offer in terms of, I bid you a 2-game suspension for these 2 games. Now the NCAA is going to come back with something else. My guess, Tony, and this is, really, let's be clear. This is not an auction. This is not like Michigan gets to, feedback in this process. The NCAA is going to say, here's what the punishment is. This is Michigan going, look, we feel really bad about this. And he's going to self-impose not getting to coach against Nebraska. And so we feel really bad. So you should feel bad because look, I'm making the pouty lip. I feel really bad. That's kind of where this is right now. That's the stage that we're in. And Michigan is not, an adorable little toddler. So I don't think the pouty lip is going to work on the NCAA. But this is at least the baseline for, okay, now we can all stop pretending that Sherrone Moore did nothing wrong and no one knew anything. And this was just one rogue individual and no one had any idea what was going on. Great. Now we're past that. Now we can start having the actual conversation about what the penalties are going to be.
Boy, for one rogue person doing all of this, a lot of people are getting suspended and in trouble for it. It's crazy. So yes, the proposal for Michigan right now is that Sherrone Moore will miss the Central Michigan game and the Nebraska game. But as we all know, just because you're not supposed to be on the sidelines for a Central Michigan game, that has not always stopped a Michigan football staff individual from being on said sideline. Though if he were to be there and you ask him about it, he may not recall, just based on past history.
Listen, Tony, we've all been on the sidelines for lots of football games. Could I tell you exactly which ones? No, of course not. Especially not ones that happened, 3 months ago. Like, right. Was I at the Rose Bowl? Who can remember, Tony? I've been at the Rose Bowl so many times. Was I there this year? I don't know. It doesn't. Why do you even care?
Yeah. Who's asking these questions? So I am seeing also some things on social media and also from, say, the Michigan side of the beat where, uh, again, this is like, what kind of this isn't even really much of a punishment. This is no big deal. It's, suspending a coach. And the thing is, it used to be that your coach getting suspended was pretty crazy, and Michigan has normalized having coaches suspended. It's like, oh, it happens every year, and it's like, well, it has. This is the second year in a row that Sherrone Moore will be suspended. I mean, when Urban Meyer was suspended for 3 games in 2018, that was a big deal, and again, having coaches suspended is indicative of something greater going on, and it's not indicative of nothing. This is indicative of a lot of things going on that not just the NCAA isn't happy with, but clearly Michigan has had to respond, and they feel like this is a response that will help put them in a good light. But there's going to be more light shown on this whole thing. So 2 games, I am not going to be shocked at all if it is more than that, because every time Michigan has put a proposal on a suspension amount, the NCAA is always like, usually, all of the last few times the NCAA has had to respond to a Michigan suspension, like, yeah, we'll add a little bit more to that. We'll see your 1 game and raise you 4 or 5 or whatever. Like, Jim Harbaugh missed 6 games last year and suspended for an entire season now if he were to ever come back, all for just nothing practically.
Right. And the normalization of, yes, the head coach is suspended, but I mean, we're just talking about 2 games is just wild, especially from the fan base / media base that for years was just hotboxing their own farts in terms of like, oh man, like the only thing that Michigan has done wrong over the last 30 years is be too good at following the rules. And like that was the state media storyline for 30 years. And now this is the second head coach in a row for Michigan who has served multiple suspensions at different times. Has Ryan Day served a suspension? No. Urban Meyer served 1 suspension. That was the end of the world. Jim Tressel was, resigned as a result of something he was going to be suspended for, and that was the end of the world. John Cooper was never suspended. Earl Bruce was never suspended. And so you have to go back to Woody Hayes, and he was, tearing up yard markers and stuff. And it's like, and look at the way Michigan fans talk about Woody Hayes and what a monster he was. And, look, he was suspended. And now it's like, well, I mean, who among us, Tony? I mean, of all the Michigan coaches of the last decade, can you name a single head coach who hasn't been suspended? No, obviously this is just normal. Frankly, Tony, is this just proof of the NCAA's vendetta against Michigan football? I don't know, but perhaps it's too soon to say.
I don't think it's too soon. I think it is clear evidence. Tom, it wasn't that long ago. In fact, I think it was 2019, 2020, when there was a side of the Michigan fandom that thought Ohio State taking online courses was the pinnacle of cheating and an advantage. And it was, is this what college is supposed to be? Is this the collegial atmosphere that we want to have using the internet? And we've come a long way since then, where you have these suspensions, these infractions, and it's like, so what? So, and it's like, but do you remember what you used to be like? And I know COVID changed everybody, but like you used to care or say you care, but I guess it was just you only cared about other people following the rule. But now that you're in this, you're on probation, which again, that is also a thing that used to matter, and it's still. I think we have to kind of, maybe we just live in this make believe world, and we always have in college sports. It's always been a little bit of make believe where you wink and you nod, and it's like there's no cheating here and there's no cheating there. We're all just in it for good old State U. But in that pretend world, it's like, gosh, you guys are on probation. Like remember there was a time where like I don't know, 10 of the 12 SEC programs are on probation, and if that happened in the Big Ten, it's like, yeah, that's not great. And then you'd have to kind of walk the straight and narrow. Michigan's on probation, and like this is a DUI checkpoint. If they're walking out into the middle of the road with a straight and narrow.
Well, and I think that this goes back to something, the phrase nothing burger has come up about 15 times in our comments. So I think most of our audience knows where this is going, but the Michigan folks have called the first, not the Connor Stalions investigation, the first one that we sort of shorthand as cheeseburgers, et cetera, because that's how it's sort of getting shorthanded by a lot of the folks that cover Michigan. They ended up on multiple years of probation and had level 1 violations coming out of that case from the NCAA. So what that sets up, as we said at the time, you know, first of all, it was more than just like, oh, he put a poor child a cheeseburger. Do you want the child to starve? Like that's how it kind of gets presented. But there were a bunch of COVID visit stuff going on. Like there were restrictions in terms of visits. And that's where the actual violations came from that were level 1s. It was not just, oh, he bought a poor starving orphan a cheeseburger and the NCAA gave him a level 1 violation. That wasn't what it was. But as we said at the time, the reason that was consequential was not because of like, oh boy, look at the punishments that are being handed down. It's okay. Now you're on probation. Now, when the Connor Stalions stuff that we all know is coming comes down the pike, guess what? Now you're a repeat violator. And you're a repeat violator that is not really cooperating with the investigations, including, you know, your head football coach not cooperating with the violations, and the, you know, your former head football coach not cooperating with the investigation, and now your new head football coach deleting text messages. And no, I know they had nothing to do with anything, and he just deleted them because he was mad. It's like, if you were trying to cover up wrongdoing, like how different would it look than what you're doing right now? And if you were not cooperating with the investigation, which is one of the things that drives the NCAA crazy and makes them want to punish you more harshly, how different would it look than the way it's been handled? And now you're also a repeat violator. This is the stuff we've been saying for months, if not years, in terms of here's why this could be an even bigger deal. Michigan has done a great job turning what could potentially have been, you know, at least a medium level severity thing or a medium to high level severity thing into potentially more than that. They have, you know, you get caught doing something and then you lie to your parents and then that turns it into a much bigger deal. That's basically what Michigan has done here, is do all the stuff, check all the boxes in terms of ways to tick off the NCAA and make your punishments potentially more significant. That's where we are right now. And I can feel, I can sense, Tony, we just did May the 4th, right? So I can use the force, and I can tell you right now on Michigan message boards I've never even seen before, I can tell you that, oh, I thought this was supposed to be a big deal. He just got a 2-game suspension. I guess it wasn't a big deal after all. Like, my brothers and sisters in Christ, allow me to assure you, until the NCAA agrees to that. If the NCAA comes back and agrees to that, that's one thing. There's no indication that that's what's happened yet. So right now, this is Michigan going, what if we give you these 2 games and he gets to coach in the game that he really wants to coach in week 2? How about that? And, you know, it's like going into a car dealership and being, you know, like, well, I know the sticker price is like $30,000 in this car, but what if I give you, writes $8,000 on a piece of paper, slides it across the counter? Like, the paper is sliding across the counter right now, and the car dealership guy is about to open the piece of paper. And what do you think he's going to say, Tony? Do you think he's going to say, yes, sold, and you can even drive the truck to the week 2 game at Oklahoma? Is that what you think the car dealership guy is going to say?
Well, they're going to have to talk to their manager, and then they're going to come back and say no. Here's my question for you, Tom, if you could just answer really, really quickly. What's the suspension for? Is it the text messages?
It's for the Central Michigan game and the Nebraska game. Thanks for asking. Yeah. There was no actual acknowledgement of what it was for, at least in the article. And here's the other piece of this. This goes back to something that we talked about before, when you had Michigan releasing, you know, leaking portions of their side of the response to the NCAA's notice of allegations. And we did a show on this in, I don't know, February, maybe January, February, where you had all the Michigan folks going, well, look, there's nothing serious in here. It's like, okay, let's do some Kremlinology. Where did this come from? The NCAA is not leaking Michigan's side of this to make Michigan look good. This is coming from Michigan's side. And all the reporting at that time said, this is, you know, from the portions that were made available for us to review. And it's like, okay, what did they not make available to you? Do you think they had all the exonerating information in the portions they didn't give you? No, I don't think that's probably. I think they were very selective in what they gave you. this is all PR stuff right now. This is all a big PR thing where, look, we released the note, the portion of the notice of allegations that they released. Boy, it didn't seem like there was a lot of real serious stuff in there. And now Sherrone Moore is going to a 2-game suspension. Why, Tony, that's practically nothing. Sounds like Michigan's going to skate on this. And then if when Michigan does not skate on this and Sherrone Moore gets, say, a 4-game suspension or a 6-game suspension, then the narrative is going to be, oh, the NCAA, they are out to get Michigan. We made a very reasonable offer. If you refer to the notice of allegations that the reporting on that, boy, there was not much in there. And we made a very reasonable offer. And boy, they were just out to get us because we're just too good. We're too handsome, Tony. We are too good at football. Our buildings are too brick covered and filled with history. The diag just simply too nice to walk across on a fall Saturday. They hate us because they ain't us, Tony. That is what the NCAA is going to do. That's, Tony. I am just going to predict that is going to be the narrative whenever the final verdict comes out. And we maybe have a better sense, ballpark idea on when that could potentially be. It sounds like.
Yes, NCAA swimming in their own copium, and so I'll get to the Committee on Infractions thing coming this June. But the reason I ask you that, Tom, because back in the winter, in January, Michigan's response to this about the texts, because we'll just assume like this is one area where Sherrone Moore has been implicated, is the deleted text messages. And in Michigan's response to the NCAA, they acknowledged the deleted text, and this is from the Yahoo story back in January. In its response, Michigan and Moore acknowledged the deleted text. However, the school contends that the texts were, quote, innocuous and not material to the investigation, and that Moore cooperated fully with the investigation, even turning over his phone for imaging, a move that revealed the previously deleted messages. And again, I like he even went so far as to turn over his phone for imaging. And this is the Yahoo writer saying that. It's like, well, he had to. So let's not forget that he needed to do that, or else he would be in a lot of in more trouble. But of course, as you mentioned, he just deleted the tweets because he was mad at the whole situation. And then further on, the university notes none of the texts were specifically about the in-person advanced scouting system, where Stalions allegedly organized himself in a group of low-level staff, blah blah blah. While then it's like. But there were texts, and about the sign stealing operation, and Michigan's response was, well, yeah, but like not saying, hey, about your sign stealing, your system of it. It was only about basically the product of the advanced scouting or the scouting, the knowing the signs. It wasn't about, hey, are you going to go scout Ball State this week? And it's kind of like if like The Sopranos, if Tony Soprano's like, hey, how are we doing on our VCR sales? And they try to implicate, he's like, I didn't know those VCRs were stolen. There's nothing in my text and messages about the VCRs being stolen. I knew we had some, and I was asking how the sales are going. So you can't put this on me. I had no prior knowledge of how these signs or these VCRs were gained. I just, they were there and we had some in inventory. And so I was asking how things are going. And that's the kind of thing where 5 months ago, 6 months ago, this was not an issue for Michigan. And now it's become an issue to where it's like, well, how about 2 games? Can we interest you in 2 games? And that's a low offer. And so because before, and I don't know if this is the quote unquote sweet spot, as Gene Smith once coined, for a Jim Tressel suspension of 2 to 3 games that eventually became you're fired. I'm not saying that's going to happen here, because we're just talking about these messages essentially, because like this is all going on while he's just Sherrone Moore is the offensive coordinator. This is going on. So you can't pin this all on him. But this one part, this deleting 52 texts, I'm going to assume is, and unless they can also, and maybe they also have found information or they've been able to tie him to the knowledge of how this stuff has gone on, because again, they're standing right next to each other on the sideline a number of times, and they're getting feedback and things like that. So it's like, again, going back to when college sports, we had to pretend about some things. And I think that's one of the things you'd have to pretend about. It's like, you are so good at this, Connor. I don't even want to know how. Like, but we do know coaches operate in a world of plausible deniability. And why do you do that? Because crap is crooked.
Well, okay, so go back and read Bo Schembechler's book, and I don't remember which one it is. I have it on my bookshelf, but it's in the other room over there. But he talks about basically, you're the head coach. It's your job to know. Every head coach who says he doesn't know is lying, because it's your job to know, and you're in charge of knowing everything in your program. And that's a very loose paraphrase, but yes, of course. Like, if you didn't know, it's your Tony Soprano example. I thought the game film just fell off the back of the truck. I didn't know. He just tells me, hey, they're going to throw the ball. I'm like, forget about it. How do you know? I don't know. Forget about it. And it's okay. Like, sure, that's absolutely. Now, if you don't know, like if a person is doing what seems like witchcraft to be able to read the minds of the opposing coaches, I mean, you can either you could be curious about that, or you can be like, well, he's probably not doing this in a legal way, but if I don't know, then I don't know. So therefore you can't get mad. I don't know. I didn't. My text doesn't use the phrase illegal in-person sign stealing scheme. So therefore you can't. I had no idea. It was just it's these people. If you are a coach at this level, you are not a moron. You are a very intelligent person. And so you can be sort of reasonably, you also know what is normal. Like, the average person off the street probably doesn't know exactly what is normal in terms of the ability to do, to do this and to interpret signals and all that. We have people in our comments all the time going, well, you probably get this off of all 22. Like, if you've watched all 22, it's on all 22. And it's not like, here's the camera zooming in on the people doing the signals. That's not in there. That's not something that you get there. So no, you're not getting it off the broadcast copy. You're not getting it off the all 22. You might be able to get an individual play like that, but not everyone. So let's hit the super chat real quick from Omar Austin. He says, do the NCAA accept the self-imposed suspension, or do they add on to it? The fact, Tony, that you go through, we talked about control F-ing just a minute ago, and control F illegal sign stealing scheme in Sherrone Moore's text, and strangely that wasn't there. The NCAA agreed to this, is strangely not in the reporting on this 2-game suspension. So I'm going to believe, Tony, that probably that is not that was not an oversight, because that would be a pretty newsworthy piece of information. So that to me strongly suggests that no, the NCAA did not accept this, and this is merely Michigan going, how about this? Will you accept this offer? Slides piece of paper across the table, $12,500 for the $30,000 car.
Tom, when you go to Texas Roadhouse and they throw the rolls on the table, are you ever like, thank you, that'll do, that's all, check please? Like, no, these are the rolls on the table, the cinnamon butter, and then you'll go on from there. This is just a start. I'm expecting more, but again, I keep going back to what is the appetite of the NCAA? Like, they will certainly take this. I feel like I wonder how much not being able to punish Jim Harbaugh more would have them like, well, at what point, because you would like to punish Michigan. I'm sure they would, but I believe that punishing what they did would be more harmful to Michigan than punishing them moving forward. Because moving forward, Michigan can just go back to being what they've always been, which is 8 to 10 wins a season, and you'll see what that is. What they were in this period of NCAA investigation was much more than that. So coincidentally, I don't know how that happened. Sure, they had some good players, but Michigan, over the 175 years of their glorious football program, has always had good players. But this is something very unusual in this little 3-year window that, to me, like, that's where I think the crux of the punishment should be. And I don't, trying to predict what the NCAA is going to do at this point, I have no idea, but I think that's where the punishment should be, rather than moving forward when so many of the parties are way out of Dodge by now.
Yeah, that's one of the things is you've got a lot of these guys who were a part of this, Jim Harbaugh, Jesse Minter, they're off to the NFL. Steve Clinkscale off to the NFL. We just did a show about them a week ago or so when they accepted show causes for a year or two. And again, the response to that was, well, that's nothing. It's because they're already off the NFL. So what does this actually matter? And it's like, okay, you guys at some point are going to have to start picking up the pattern. Boy, this is a lot of different coaches who've been suspended for the same thing. It almost doesn't matter if they're off in the NFL from Michigan's perspective. From Jesse Minter's perspective, it doesn't matter at all. From Steve Clinkscale's perspective, it doesn't matter at all. From Michigan's perspective, boy, this is like almost your whole coaching staff who was involved in various NCAA violations over the span of several years and spanning a couple different cases. That feels like, maybe it's a little more institutional, like a control issue at institutional level, Tony, and not too much control, a lack of control at that sort of level. And that's the kind of thing that the NCAA, if it's not just like one bad actor, it's like, oh boy, well, we had this one crazy intern, he sold vacuum cleaners. Is he crazy or what? Like, you're way past that at this point. You now have multiple cases. You've now had two separate head coaches suspended, in some cases, self-imposed suspensions. I think at least one of Jim Harbaugh's was self-imposed. This one for now, Sherrone Moore, is self-imposed. You're acknowledging that your head coaches, former and present, have committed violations. So this is all sort of teeing up some kind of punishment, some kind of significant punishment. And I think I'm with you. I'm not at the point where I'm going to say it's going to be exactly this and not that. You're going to have the people who are, if Michigan just gets titles vacated, you're going to have people say, well, I still, I know that happened and it doesn't matter. And I was there and I have the t-shirt and whatever. And if you have stuff going forward, it's going to be, this is so unfair. None of these players had anything to do with any of this. But the moving forward, if you have, say, a postseason ban of a year or two or something like that, I'm just throwing this out there. I'm not saying this is exactly what it's going to be, but you have a 2-year postseason ban. Well, that's not fair because the players who are on the roster now didn't have anything to do with that. And so you're going to have that. But those same people back in 2023, when you had this all going down in the first place, and it was like, this is all very obviously happening, and this is all very obviously impacted results on the field this year. It was like, well, you can't give us a postseason ban now. We haven't seen, you haven't had due process. So now you've got due process, and then now it's going to be wailing and gnashing of teeth about how, well, these kids didn't have anything to do with that. And at that point, I think the argument, if the NCAA does go that path, is you can always transfer. If you want to go play in the postseason, you can always transfer, and that's absolutely fine. I'm sure other schools have general studies as a major option as well, and so you can go find another school and you can participate in the postseason that way. I think there are certainly arguments to be made in terms of moving forward versus looking backwards. Which one would be more detrimental? You remember Michigan having to take down the Fab Five banners, and that was like, that was kind of like a thing that just constantly got brought up. And it was like, yeah, the Fab Five, and they did great stuff, but they won a bunch of games and they made the Final Four and all that kind of stuff. But then you didn't have the banners, and that was, I think, for Michigan people a little more like that. That was something that was like really kind of a little bit of a shameful thing for Michigan fans back in the 90s. The Overton window on acceptability has seemingly changed a little bit over the last 30 years, because now it's head coach. Oh, the head coach has only been suspended for the second time in 2 seasons. Is that all? That's nothing. But I think you either retroactive or moving forward penalties are certainly both on the table at this point for the NCAA, and it just really depends on how ticked off is the NCAA right now. Are they? I certainly don't think that this particular pound of flesh of the Central Michigan game and the Nebraska game, wow, that's you're basically one of those orders of monks that does the self-flagellation. Wow, what a heroic and bold punishment to level on yourself. Case dismissed.
And I do think we've only seen just portions of the entire case against Michigan, because there's still a Central Michigan thing going on. Like, what is the NCAA going to think about all of the games that Connor Stalions had designs on attending or having somebody attend? Like, are all of those games in doubt now? Like, is that the same as playing an ineligible player, where your intent is to gain an advantage, an illegal advantage, illegal by NCAA's terms in that game. So generally in the past, when that has been done, then boom, that game is vacated. That is thrown out. And so then that just begs the question of how, if this, I keep saying, if this was 10 or 15 years ago, every game that Connor Stalions touched with this advanced scouting system would be thrown out, those games would become losses. They would be vacated. Those wins would be vacated. I just don't know that that's going to be the case here. Now, Pat 40 is reporting that the Committee on Infractions is meeting and going to have their whole thing on June 6th and 7th, and that's where the NCAA and Michigan get together basically and start trying to meet in person and try to like committees like, here's what we found, your response, and then I don't know the timeline. I've been frantically trying to find timelines on what. Okay, so after June 7th, how long until the ruling is handed down? Because the thing is, then when the Committee on Infractions hands down the ruling, Michigan can appeal that as well, and so then it starts another timeline from there. And based on how much Michigan has been unwilling to compromise, I do wonder how willing they are going to be on this, on whatever the ruling is, because you figure if they were in lockstep with the NCAA at this point, this would have been settled. And clearly these two sides have been battling. So yeah, I guess go ahead and try to appeal. It doesn't sound like that I can't say they wouldn't win the appeal because we don't know what all of the factors are, but so far the NCAA doesn't seem willing to be too lenient in any of this, which is either a bad sign for Michigan, or Michigan is trying to be like too soft in their offers. And so they'll meet somewhere in the middle, and Michigan is hoping that it won't be as bad as it could be. And then the NCAA would just like to kind of move on from this whole thing, because the branches on this have been just ridiculous.
Well, the NCAA is not really in the mood to, I'm sure, like have bad news and bad actors being a big part of the story around college football. They would like the story to be, hey, look, hey, the playoff is so fun, and look at how many fans are coming to the games and all that stuff. They don't want this to be a long-term thing. You can tell that because they are not. The NCAA is not leaking stuff, and that's a pretty good indication that they're not trying to win this in the court of public opinion. They're not trying to make this a big story. They're just kind of going through their process. I don't know the timeline after the meeting in early June. My guess would be either 60 or 90 days, because that's been a pretty consistent window of time after a lot of these deadlines in the past. So you're probably looking at something late summer, maybe. I would guess they're going to want to have this before the season starts, but I wonder if you have 90 days after after those meetings. That probably gets you. I bet 90 days after those meetings probably gets you to right after the Oklahoma game, because the Oklahoma game is probably September 7th, September 6th, whatever that would be, something like that. That probably gets you about there. So just with just nothing, this is not me reporting. This is just me sort of guessing and looking at the timelines and going, I wonder if that's part of it. I bet that's probably a rough timeline. And this is from Mike Farino. It was something I wanted to get into anyway. Super chat from Mike Farino. Feels like with Michigan President Santa Ono leaving, things are getting set up for Michigan to claim NCAA overreach, but then have a new president come in and clean house under the guise of not having a choice after the sanctions. So if you guys did not see this on Sunday night, Michigan President Santa Ono, who's been there for about 3 years now, who has been a very, very vocal supporter of Michigan athletics throughout this whole process. And he was the one who was quote tweeting stuff with Bet during this whole, as this whole thing was sort of starting in 2023. He is the only finalist for the president job at the University of Florida. So he's going to be that guy, even though he's not officially that guy yet. So, there was sort of an immediate on our board rush to say, well, that just means he's only doing this because Michigan's going to get firebombed by the NCAA. And I don't think that that's it. There's some other stuff going on that has made him not a particularly popular person up in Ann Arbor. There's stuff with federal funding. There's stuff with, and Michigan's response, or what people perceive as a lack of sufficient response to that. There's been all sorts of stuff with negotiations with staff people and faculty people and TAs and all that kind of stuff. Those kind of groups, salary negotiations that were not going well. So he's not a universally popular person up there, completely separate from the athletics piece. And I do want to kind of remind people that the university president, you're just thinking about the athletics piece of this, not the English department or the chemistry department or whatever. The athletics piece of it is probably like 10% of his job. So that's not probably the single driving force behind this, but you do end up having, if this does go badly for Michigan, then that certainly, it would be a stain on his legacy at Michigan. So getting out now is probably not a bad thing in terms of that. I just don't think that's the single driving force behind the decision to go to Florida at this point. Super chat from Mike Ferguson. Breaking news: Michigan has decided to self-impose further punishments by forfeiting the 2007 Appalachian State game.
The first game ever on the Big Ten Network. What a way to ring in high definition television to America. Good job, Jim Delaney. I did say, like, maybe the punishment should just be backward facing, and you cut out the part that where the alleged cheating occurred. But then you also have the way Michigan is operating through this whole thing and basically being difficult, and being difficult, trying to prove their innocence. These guys are being so difficult, trying to maintain their innocence. How dare they? But when on one hand you're telling NCAA, Sherrone Moore didn't do anything wrong. Look at this and this and this and this, and you're trying to use your semantics and things like that. Like, that may not go over well for them. It's like, yes, sure. Like I said earlier, they were about the sign stealing, but not about the advanced scouting to get the sign stolen. And the NCAA is like, what are we doing here? Can we operate? It's kind of like when this whole House case, where now this make-believe world of NCAA sports has to go in front of Congress, which is a completely different make-believe world. But when two make-believe worlds come together, you kind of have to live in reality. And Congress is like, so why aren't these players considered in plays? Why do you limit this? And why? Well, because once upon a time, there's a land of make-believe, and you got people like, no, that's not going to work for us. And now it's like, okay, well, now we've got to kind of open up the fourth wall and fix this before we can get back into our, land of the Smurfs here.
Yeah, that's a whole separate side of this whole thing. It's college sports is in such a weird spot right now, and a lot of the narrative around the NCAA's handling of this case has rested on the NCAA is toothless now and it has no power, and so therefore Michigan's going to skate, or the NCAA is powerless now, so this is their last chance to make a big statement, so therefore they're going to be extremely harsh on Michigan. I don't think either of those is really going to be the driving force behind it. I just keep going back to, in the past, what would you do to really tick the NCAA off and cause them to give you more harsh penalties than you might otherwise get? And you would not cooperate with investigations. You might hide evidence. You might, belittle the NCAA in public. And it's just, Michigan is just, Santa Tony is going down his list and checking all of the boxes, and all of the boys have been bad children this year in terms of what the NCAA likes. So that's one of those things that makes me think you're looking at something more consequential for them. But I can see, looking backwards and having the case for making it a backward facing punishment, as you said. I can see the case for making it a forward-facing punishment, because in terms of actual on-field results, forward-facing punishment in terms of 2-year bowl ban, or your roster limit is cut to a certain number, because a scholarship reduction doesn't do anything because you can just give people NIL and make up for that. A roster limit reduction, that would be something that would be, that's something that would be potentially a really significant blow moving forward. But in all these cases, this goes back to what you were talking about with the House case. All of these things, you're looking at lawsuits. If you cut down the number of players on the team, well, you might have people suing you because then, well, I was supposed to be on this team and now I've lost my scholarship and I've lost my opportunity to go to school and I've got all that stuff. And, everyone in college sports is just suing everyone else for every individual thing. And however you're going to settle the House case, someone's going to be upset. Either the football players who earn a disproportionate amount of the revenue are not going to receive a corresponding amount of the revenue, and so then they're going to be mad. Or Title IX and women's sports is going to receive, what they consider not an equal portion under Title IX, and so then they're going to sue. Or, that you're going to have to cut programs, and then those, the people from the fill in the blank, men's gymnastics program or wrestling program, they're going to sue. And the House case is named after a swimmer at Arizona State. His last name was House. So this is not, the Ed O'Bannon case where it's, here's a very famous college basketball player whose name and image and likeness were used without his permission, who, a guy who everyone in the country remembers, Ed O'Bannon from UCLA in the mid 90s. This is a swimmer from Arizona State who I literally, off the top of my head right now, still cannot remember his first name. So it is, it doesn't have to be just the big name players. Everyone can potentially get in on the lawsuit fund and billable hours remaining undefeated and all that kind of stuff. So it just feels like as we're talking through this, I think the backward facing punishments would probably be the cleanest and easiest from a legal perspective. In terms of, you take down the banner, you take away the trophies, and the NCAA can't actually take away the trophy, but the college football playoff, if the NCAA vacates games from the 2023 season, then the Big Ten could take away the Big Ten championship trophy, and the college football playoff, which operates independently from the NCAA, could take away their trophy. It's not guaranteed that they would, but this is, just talking through all of this right now, it's so clear why this is just so messy. And there's just not like one clear, easy, here's the simple solution and here's how it's going to be.
Tom, you remember when Justin Fields in 2020 put out an online petition to let us play, and he kind of got this groundswell going, and he was a small part of the reason that Ohio State and the rest of the Big Ten got to play that year. What if Michigan gets a postseason ban and like Bryce Underwood sues and gets an injunction against the NCAA, and it's like Bryce Underwood lawsuit has gotten Michigan bowl eligible, and that's the next step. That is the college football world we are living in now, where it used to be just a moveon.org or something like that. Now it is Underwood versus NCAA for the rights to go to the Cheez-It Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, listen, that's they just got to whatever the Outback Bowl is now, and while they didn't get coconut shrimp, they did get to go to Tampa, so that's basically as good as coconut shrimp. So do you want to deny more? Do you want to deny the future people the opportunity? I don't think so. But where would Bryce Underwood get the money to pay an attorney? As we know, Michigan doesn't pay players, so it's because that would negate all of the good things that ever happened. Super chat from Mike Farino. To be clear, wasn't talking about him leaving because of the scandal, just pointing out it sets up nicely for Michigan to put up a strong defense for fans, then still have a new president clean house. And that's true. I mean, the only real, other than Sherrone Moore, and Sherrone Moore was not a head coach at this time, the university president is going to be gone. Jim Harbaugh is gone. So the only person who's left is Ward Manuel. I would, if you're setting an over-under on the remaining tenure of Ward Manuel at Michigan, I would bet the under on 12 months probably. Because it does, to Mike's point, it does feel like, that when this all finally goes through, whatever the punishment ends up being, it does feel like, just from a fundraising perspective, you bring in a new guy, and then the question from the boosters is not, why didn't you do more? It's, why didn't the guy before you do more? And it's like, well, listen, I wasn't here, so I can't really answer answer that, but I can tell you, boy, we're going to fight like heck moving forward, and we are going to do things the right way, and blah, 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 blah. I mean, rubble. You know how those goes. So, yeah, I do think, to his point, Santa Ono leaving, while not driven by this, is probably going to play a role in the Michigan response to this.
You mentioned Ward Manuel. Let's not forget, last year he was named the John L. Toner Athletic Director of the Year. So, in a year where there's some crazy things going on at Michigan, you got Ward Manuel, and they're locking up the AD of the Year award.
Yeah, that was that they announced that at Big Ten Media Days, and I just kind of like tweeted it out because it was something that I think it was Tony Petitti was just kind of talking through, like, oh, here's some of the different achievements that the Big Ten had, and I was just sort of like tweeting live some of the stuff, and I tweeted that out, and I was like, wait a minute, and then my mentions were just like unrecognized. Just it was like the code from the Matrix, basically, in my Twitter mentions for the next 24 hours or so. And I think this is Kyle says this is the hammer that Ohio State fans were talking about. LMAO. Again, no, this is not. This is Michigan. This is Michigan's opening bid on this. This is not the NCAA has accepted this. This is Michigan's opening bid on this. So now Michigan, which has said we did nothing wrong, everything was, hey, let's talk about New Hampshire and who might be up there and RICO cases. Now, okay, Michigan's coming to the table and saying, okay, so remember when we said we said we didn't do anything wrong. Funny story. Anyway, TLDR, Sherrone Moore is going to miss 2 games. Is that cool? And like, is that cool? Question mark is where we are in the process. There's not a response from the NCAA yet. So no, this is not by any means the final piece of this whole thing.
I think this is like the big blind, and somebody calling it going all in. It's like, no, this is just anteing up.
Yeah, that's Brad says week 3 to 4 suspension after the Oklahoma game. The suspension is like telling a judge, you know how you have to go to jail, but you will postpone it until after you go on a hot date. Cool. And that's basically it. Like, well, it wouldn't be very convenient for me to go to jail this time because I got to mow the lawn. I got other stuff to do. Like, can we? And that's something that typically, Tony, unless you're involved in some like very high level white collar crimes, that's typically not an option that the judge makes available to you. And so I would guess that will not be an option that is made available to Sherrone Moore. I mean, if anyone wants to bet that Santa Ono reference, if anyone wants to bet that Sherrone Moore will end up, the ultimate punishment for Sherrone Moore in this whole thing will be a 2-game suspension served during games 3 and 4 of the season. I'm sure there are other folks in the comments who will be happy to take that action, but I suspect that will probably not be where this all ends up.
Tom, now I'm just imagining Bill Belichick and sitting in on a committee on infractions meeting. If North Carolina goes terribly wrong and there's some infractions there, and the NCAA is talking to him and they're proposing this, and then you got Bill Belichick's girlfriend like, no, we're not doing that. We're not. 1 game, that's it, and it's going to be this game, and just trying to set the rules, because again, that's where sports are going as well. But yeah, I don't think just this 2-game thing. If that is the end of the Michigan punishment in this, then I will have misread this thing completely, and we'll be happy to admit it because it would be a first time ever.
Well, I keep going back to listen to what we were saying in October 2023 and then pick whatever source you want on the Michigan side of things in terms of like what we're talking about and how this has sort of played out. And you hit, all the people are still pointing to like, well, this guy, he's very plugged in at Michigan. He says this is still going to be nothing. And it's like, go back to 2023. This guy was telling you how Jim Harbaugh is about to sign a long-term contract extension and he's going to be at Michigan forever and everything's going to be great and there's not going to be anything and this is nothing and it provided no additional benefits. And, look at how things have played out over the last, 18 months. I think if you want to be real honest with yourself, if you listen to what we were saying back then and what we've been saying kind of consistently throughout this whole process, we've probably been a little bit closer in terms of how this was going to play out than some of the folks on the Michigan side. And I recognize we're not in the final stage of this, but boy, you would not have expected Michigan to have these like peace offering to the NCAA about, oh, listen, what about 2 games? What if we just suspend our head coach for 2 games, and then our old defensive coordinator takes a show cause, and our old secondary coach takes a show cause, and our old head coach goes to the NFL because he wasn't able to work out a deal with the athletic director to get his, any sort of future punishments. He doesn't get suspended. He keeps getting paid, and everything's fine, and he can't be fired for cause. I don't think that's what anyone was saying on the Michigan side of things back in October 2023. So, given the fact that that's how a lot of the stuff is played out, I think you probably should take a second and think about, well, if they haven't been exactly right, if they've been underplaying a lot of stuff up to this point, what are the odds that they've really got this nailed and this is it and this is going to be it? And boy, they sure, oh boy, everyone said this was going to be a big punishment, and boy, this is nothing. Like, you might want to turn around and look behind you, because there's okay, the serial killer's gone. I guess we can end the movie with the happy credits. Hey, why is the music in a minor key? What's going on here? Like, that's where we are right now.
I'm looking at a couple of tweets from a Michigan beat reporter, and I don't want to pick on any one person, because that was the overriding message was like, this is relatively not much. Like, this whole thing, it's like, well, it violated an NCAA rule that the NCAA wanted to get rid of, but decided not to. And it's like, it's not a big deal. There's not really going to come anything much from this. And yet we continue to see the goalpost kind of just getting pushed further and further back. Because, like, here's one of the tweets that I'm looking at. It's like, Moore getting 2 games, a show cause for Stalions, probably a fine. Well, that's what everyone has been expecting, and it's a pretty soft hammer. This is not the message that has been put out there for the past 18 months or whatever from up north in terms of the violations and there have been people who tell you there were no violations, which is crazy because Michigan has admitted to there being violations. And the fact that you're now suspending a head coach for 2 games for something that you tried to tell the NCAA there's nothing wrong with it. So now the NCAA has called your bluff on that. So you're like, okay, here's 2 games. And again, this is just the start. And this is not, and for people to be pushing that this is all that's going to happen, I think is kind of silly at this point, because look at the harshness of the penalties. You're getting show causes for guys for relatively minor things, but the trying to keep it from people, and it's the one after another thing. It's everything is compounding, and now you've got a head coach who's going to be serving his 2nd suspension. He's already committed NCAA violations. Like, he's a repeat violator at this point, based on trying to hide information from the NCAA. But he eventually gave it to them. He free will. He gave it to them, and yes, they had to do the imaging to get it off of his phone because he deleted stuff. So there's just been there are people with timelines on Twitter and message boards. You're like, this is insane, where all of these coaches, all of these infractions, all of this and all of that, and for Michigan fans to be like, or whomever to be like, this, so like, this is, it's a minor thing. It's like, but what are all these suspensions and these penalties mean for some? Have you ever seen so much punishment for something so minor? Like, you've had a head coach suspended for an entire year. Do you think this is all that's going to happen to Michigan right now? Like, the school hasn't even been punished yet, and the school is going to be punished.
Right, exactly. And again, we're not going to pretend to have, like, down to the letter, this is exactly what it's going to be, but there's obviously a punishment coming. The idea sort of summed up here by the comment from Moose 3, Michigan self-imposing 2 games on Moore, and we got to choose the weeks. LOL. Sounds like a massive hammer is coming. Crying, laughing. Again, where does it say the NCAA agreed to this? This is the opening bid for a team that has, for a program that has said for a long time did nothing wrong, and this is innocent and this is nothing. And So now your opening bid is, well, we'll suspend our head coach for 2 games. That's not. I mean, can you show me Charlie Baker's signature on the document? No. Well, okay. So I guess that's not probably where this is going to end. This is just all of this. I'm really a little concerned about the pattern recognition from folks, where it's like we did a show a week and a half ago, and it's Jesse Minter and Steve Klinkscale, and they're accepting these show causes, and it's like, well, it doesn't matter because they're in the NFL. Yes, but now this is 2 more Michigan coaches who've had show causes. Now, it's just 2 games, and he gets to choose the games. Number one, they haven't actually accepted this yet, but this is Michigan now offering up Sherrone Moore. Hello, please take this head coach for 2 games, because even though he didn't do anything wrong, we would like to offer him up for a 2-game suspension. At some point, you guys have to pick up the pattern here. The pattern is, boy, there sure are a lot of Michigan coaches getting punished for significant, for violations. And I won't even say the word significant because people get all bent out of shape about the word significant. This is significant because of the pattern. It's not significant because of this. The drip, drip, drip of this that's coming out is a pretty common tactic PR-wise, where it's like, well, that's not so bad. That's only slightly worse than we thought the last time. And boy, it's only slightly worse than we thought the last time. Go back to October 2023, read through the list of suspensions and the list of, how Jim Harbaugh left, and Jim Harbaugh was suspended multiple times, and Sherrone Moore has now been suspended multiple times, and your defensive coordinator has a show cause, and your linebackers coach got fired, and you start going through, and it's like, boy, it seems like there's a pattern here, and you're looking back at this as a one at a time thing. The NCAA is looking at this as a big pattern of facts over the last couple of years, spanning 2 different cases. And the pattern of facts is not great for Michigan right now. And the 2 games is Michigan's offer of this. This is not the NCAA's acceptance of the offer. I'm going to blame myself. I do need to run in about 8 minutes. So we're going to zip through a couple.
Can I just bring up one point? Kyle says here that the NCAA has no power anymore. It's a dying institution. If that were true, why is Michigan offering up their head coach for 2 games? Clearly, the NCAA has some power, and they're trying to mitigate some of that punishment. If they weren't worried about the NCAA, they would just continue trucking.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right, so we're going to zip through some real quick comments that I had starred from earlier. Terry says, "Tom, I'm going to pay a speeding ticket even though I haven't been pulled over yet." Yeah, I mean, listen. He didn't do anything wrong. Why would it, I'm just going to mail $130 to the police department just in case. And I'm going to do it in a week that's convenient for me so that then I can go to the game that I actually want to. So therefore it's fine.
That's how insurance works.
Yeah. Woody says, surprised they didn't suspend him for the spring game. Man, that's
well, they were still in denial at that point.
Yeah. Chadwick says, what the heck? I didn't get a notification on the live show. If you are make sure you hit the bell. Make sure if you're watching on YouTube, you hit the thumbs up. But the best way to make sure you get notification is to make sure you're subscribed, but then also hit the bell. Like you can, if you've hit it before, you can sometimes unring it and then ring it again. Sometimes YouTube, if it's been a while since you did that, it'll kind of stop sending you those notifications. So you need to do that again, but definitely hit the thumbs up on that video. Terry wants to know what's next. No salt fries. That should satisfy the NCAA. That feels like a Syracuse punishment. Salt fries. That's not a Michigan thing as much. Zinter says, surprised he didn't suspend himself for 8 random quarters over 8 games. That's when the game goes statistically final. You're up by 31 points in the middle of the third quarter. Like, I'm going to suspend myself for the last quarter and a half of this game. We'll see you boys at the practice field.
I once saw Joe Paterno suspend himself for a quarter or so.
And one quick point: this is not the Jim Harbaugh suspension where you just had I'm just suspended for the game, but I can be there during the week. These are during the week suspensions as well. So these are more consequential than the game only ones. Tom M says show cause is coming. Presumably he means for Sherrone Moore, and that's possible. We will see what the evidence shows, because again, this is just Michigan sort of opening sort of bid on this whole thing. Mike says it's too early on a Monday for Tom's multiple personality voices. Yeah, sorry, I wasn't going for multiple personality. Think of it as characters. They less, I would prefer to not be lumped in as some kind of a diagnosable condition. That's
who is the real Tom Orr?
Oh, well, that's a question I'm not sure even you are ready to hear about yet. Jordan says, serious question. Can Michigan really be using the word allegedly anymore with a straight face? I mean, come on. And it feels like the answer to that is it depends, where obviously they're admitting to some wrongdoing here. If they're offering up their head coach for a 2-game suspension, I'm sure there are pieces of this that they're still going to fight and they're still going to say allegedly, but again, the trend here is what you're looking for. It's just the pattern, the trend. Where is this all going? And it's like, boy, it keeps being more coaches. It keeps being more stuff. And they're admitting to this stuff. This is a self-imposed thing. So this is not a, random like, could be anything. Jordan also says those who stay will be implicated. Omar wants to know why he has a BH next to his name. It is because you are a member of our YouTube channel. You can become a member of our YouTube channel to get a little badge like that. And it just helps support us. You can also support us by becoming a member at BuckeyeHuddle.com, where we have added a whole bunch of staff folks the last couple of days, Berm and Andrew Ellis and Justin Whitlatch. So lots of exciting news at Buckeye Huddle, completely outside of this. Geiger Lee says, while this level of cheating in college football has not been uncovered before, what would be the closest comparison across all sports? The Astros sign stealing?
I mean, that's, in terms of sign stealing, that's the other one, right? Like there's Deflate Gate, but I think the sign stealing is on the same level because you're trying to gain an advantage that is not supposed to be gained, and that both involves stealing signs, if it were. But super chat from Mike Ferguson. The words of the day are lack of institutional control and repeat offenders. And Tom, the thing I keep saying about this is Michigan is not a lack of institutional control. It feels like there is so much institutional control in making this whole thing happen. Like there are so many pieces and parts of it, like this, that so many people were aware of something that they've been able to kind of lock it down for a while. But I don't know how you don't get lack of institutional control. I don't know how they don't get repeat offenders when you're on probation, when you're already on probation and you're dealing with another NCAA problem within a year. Like this isn't concurrent. These are consecutive things basically going on.
If you are not familiar, you could watch a documentary called Pony Excess about the NCAA and an institution that was committing significant violations while already on probation, and they're not going to get the death penalty like SMU did in the 1980s. That's absolutely not going to happen. I can say that with extraordinary confidence. But if you are already on probation and there are additional violations and there's a whole separate unrelated case, that's the kind of thing the NCAA frowns upon and the kind of stuff the NCAA takes pretty seriously. So again, this is just, we keep talking about the pattern. It's just, you got to recognize the pattern here. This is what we're talking about. This is what we're looking at and saying, like, here's the road, like follow the little, we're going to treat this like Candyland. We're going to treat everyone like children. Follow the gumdrop path. And boy, the gumdrop path is leading to a place that is not, and this is where it's going to end. I bet the NCAA is going to dust their hands and say, well, Central Michigan, that's the closest to the middle of Michigan that there is. That must be the most important game. I bet that's it. I bet this is where this all ends. Like, I don't think so. If it was done, they wouldn't have another hearing coming up in June.
Yeah, so we'll get out of here. Michigan, they'll skate. Central Michigan gets the death penalty. I think that's what Tom just said. So thank you all for tuning in. Hit the thumbs up if you could, if you're watching on YouTube. We do appreciate that. And again, find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Thank you all for tuning in, and we will talk to you all later.